Okay, so today we're going to learn about absolute value equations. Now, absolute value equations are just like normal equations, except for they involve absolute values. And what an absolute value is the magnitude Alright, the magnitude or size of a number without regard for its sign. So when we take the absolute value of a number, we basically just ignore the sign. We want the size of that number. How big is it? What is its absolute value? Okay, so looking at my examples here, I've got A, absolute value of -6. The size of that number is just 6. So the absolute value of -6, I'm going to remove the sign and it's going to be 6. Okay? So basically, when we take the absolute value of a negative number, it loses its sign. Its size stays the same. So we don't care if it's positive or negative. We just want to know how big it is. So for B here, I've got the absolute value of 10. Well, we're not changing the sign. We just want to know the size of the number. So the size is just 10. There's no trick here. We're just basically taking the size of the number and removing the sign. So try these next three and see what you get. All right. So what you should have gotten, we've got its absolute value of -1,000. The size of that number is just 1,000, so the absolute value is 1,000. Absolute value of -5.623. Well, the size of that number is 5.623, so I should just have gotten 5.623. And the absolute value of 6.32, well, the size is 6.32, so it is 6.32. All right. Now, when these come into equations, there is something special that happens because inside the absolute value, did you notice that the difference, if I have the absolute value of -10 and the absolute value of 10, they're exactly the same thing, right? Because absolute value of -10, the size is 10, so it's just 10, and the absolute value of 10 is 10. So when I have these in equations, something special happens. The absolute value of x plus 3 is equal to 16. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is set up two equations, because not only can the inside of this be positive 16, but what do you think can be in there? If this can be equal to 16, and the absolute value of the absolute value of 16 is 16, and the absolute value of -16 is what? Well, it's 16. So technically, this inside can be both positive and -16. So I'm going to set up two equations. My first equation is going to be the normal. I'm basically removing the sign. I get x plus 3 equals 16. And then the second equation that I'm going to set up, because the inside of this can be -16, I'm going to solve it for -16. So my second equation is going to be x plus 3 equals -16. Okay. So when I solve absolute value equations, I set it up twice. I solve for the positive value, and I also solve for the negative value, because it's only the size of the number that matters, not the sign. Okay, so solve this first one. I subtract 3, get x equals 13. Solve the second one. I subtract 3 again, get x equals -19. Okay, so there's two possible values for x that I can plug in here and get positive 16. Now let's try it. If I plug in 13 into this absolute value equation, I get the absolute value of 13 plus 3 is equal to 16. And simplify, I get 13 plus 3 is 16. Absolute value. Is the absolute value of 16 equal to 16? Yes. So we're good. All right, I'm going to plug in my second one. Negative 19 plus 3 is negative 16. If I combine these two, I get negative 16 absolute value. I'm sorry, this should be equal to positive 16, not negative 16. Is the absolute value of negative 16 positive 16? Yes, the size of the number is 16. I dropped the sign. So these two values are valid. All right, now pause the video for a second, actually, and try example 2 and see what you can come up with. Okay, so I'm going to set this up. First thing, I'm going to get rid of these signs. You can think about getting rid of the absolute value signs like creating another equal sign, right? You notice there's 2 bars here, right? So I'm going to create 2 equal signs. I'm going to set this inside equal to both positive 5 and negative 5. Okay. And just because the inside of this can be equal to both positive 5 and negative 5. So set it up, I get 5x minus 10 equals 5, and 5x minus 10 equals negative 5. Add 10 to both sides. 5x is equal to 15. Divide by 5. Get x. You should have gotten x is equal to 3. Okay. For this one, I'm going to add 10 to both sides. Get 5x is equal to positive 5. Because negative 5 plus 10 is positive 5. Divide by 5, divide by 5. You should have gotten x is equal to 1. All right, so let me show you, explain through one more example. Okay, so we use 2 different colors again. Blue. Okay, so we've got the absolute value of negative 3x plus 12 is equal to 3. All right, so remember that the inside of this, if it's positive or negative 3, in both cases is equal to 3. So I'm going to remove my absolute value sign and create 2 equations. Negative 3x plus 12 is equal to 3. Switch colors. Negative 3x plus 12 is equal to negative 3. Okay, and that's because, remember, both positive and negative 3 can go inside here. And the answer will be 3, right? Okay, so I'm going to solve both of those because there's 2 values for x that work for me. So let's solve my first one. To solve for 3, I subtract 12 from both sides. Get negative 3x is equal to negative 9, and then divide by negative 3. Should have got x equals 3. Right. Solve my second one. I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides. Negative 3x is equal to negative 15, because negative 3 minus 12 is negative 15. Then divide by negative 3. X is equal to 5. Okay. So those are my 2 answers. I've got x is equal to 3 and x is equal to 5. All right, pause the video one more time and try the last example and see what you come up with. All right. So again, I'm going to switch back and use a couple different colors here. The absolute value of 4x minus 7 is equal to 21. So you should have set up 2 equations. I get 4x minus 7 equals positive 21.
Mr. Dow, if you're in the building, please report to room 318. Mr. Dow, please report to room 318. Thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. 4x equals positive 21, and 4x minus 7 equals negative 21. Okay, And then what you should have done is just solve both equations. So add 7 to both sides of this one. You have 4x is equal to 28. Divide by 4, divide by 4. You get x is equal to 7 for my first answer. Then solve the second one. I'll add 7 to both sides. You have 4x is equal to negative 14. Divide by 4, divide by 4. You get x. I can't divide this evenly, so I just have to reduce. So divide both of these by 2. So I get x is equal to negative 7 over 2. Alright, so your two answers should have been x is equal to 7 and x is equal to negative 7 over 2. Okay, so I want you guys to try the 6 practice for tomorrow. Remember, there's 3 here on the front and there's 3 on the back that you need to complete. And be ready to talk about them in class tomorrow. Have a good night.